Live from Los Angeles, to which you will be invited. And we'll be rolling out a robust social media campaign on all our platforms, as well as an outdoor media campaign, all designed to educate, enlighten, and empower you in our fight for climate justice.
We want cleaner air.
Caring about the community means caring about the climate. At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that we really can change the world if we care enough. If we care enough. If we care enough. If we care enough. If we care enough.
First things first.
First things first, it's the DU General, Money B. I'ma put you up on the schedule, 6 to 9, 8 weekdays, not 2 and 7. Let's go. We got a lot to talk about, so much to pedal through. Unapologetically progressive. Tune to KBLA 1580 to get the mess. We're your ancestors' favorite radio station. First black on talk radio, left side of the nation. Me and Dominique DiPrima go way back. Tag Smiley making sure the station stays black. Discussing all the issues in our community. We're hosted black and brown and others find unity. So let's talk about it. Maybe we can improve it. Digital underground, always down with the movement. So we tune in to First Things First with the Queen of Black Talk Radio, Dominique DiPrima. Go sis.
First things first.
Good morning and God bless TGIF. I'm Dominique DiPrima. This show is called First Things First, my first thing today and every day, giving thanks, giving praises, asking for blessings from God, asking for the blessings of the ancestors and the elders. And let's go, let's go, let's go. TGIF, and it is packed from wall to wall today. We got so much going on, and I love that. Of course, you're invited into every minute of it at 800-920-1580. 800-920-1580. It's election season, so things are a little different than we typically do them. Our one is left coast local. We are sticking to that, but we have a special guest in studio. Hour 2, we go national, international, and beyond. But of course, it's Friday, so it'll be Freedman Fridays. And in Cobra's Cam Howard will be joining us for that conversation. You're welcome in on the phones, 800-920-1580. You are welcome in the chat, which is on YouTube, youtube.com, and then you got to put KBLA 1580. And we have a very, very special guest today. I've been encouraging you, and I will continue to encourage you to call and respond and whatnot in hour 1 to whatever you hear on Freedman Fridays. However, today we have a special guest. And so we're going to, have a little musical interlude like we did yesterday. Sometimes it's nice to have a break from the election. I'm not going to call it stress because you're not running, right? I'm not running. The election day to day, right? Because it is a lot. So we're going to do a bit of a dive today on this second day of Black History Month. Into some musical history, musical living, jazz, and so much more. Daime Arocena is joining us in studio. So, yay, what a week around here. But look, I am now moving into election space right away today. As you know, there's a lot going on. We'll be talking about that later. Dr. Gerald Horn is going to be signing books tomorrow. We've got a special Rosa Parks event. The Pan-African Film Festival is kicking off. There's a lot going on. But right now, it is time to think about March 5th or February 5th, if your ballot comes then. In the studio with me live is a candidate for Assembly District 57. She says her story's not unlike many other immigrant stories across Los Angeles. She was born in Mexico, and at a very young age, her parents brought her to the U.S. for a chance at a better life. She spent her childhood, she says, cleaning mansions with her mom, who was a housekeeper. Her father worked in construction. I guess we'll hear more of her story for her As an openly bi-Latina immigrant, she says she knows firsthand what we need to achieve full lived equality for women, for immigrants, LGBTQ plus people, and communities of color. Dulce Vasquez, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So you are running for the 57th, which is a semi-crowded race. This is a seat that you guys may remember is currently occupied by Reggie Jones-Sawyer. Why the decision? Running for any elected office, but especially here in California, it's a big commitment.
Actually, I have Reggie to blame himself. It is a big decision, and I don't know if you know that I ran for Los Angeles City Council in 2022. So I was coming off a very bruising battle. I was coming off of a very difficult, sort of stressful time running a really massive campaign during COVID. And Reggie approached me and he called me up and he said, hey, we need to make sure that, someone that's elected to this seat is of good moral compass and can carry on the work that I'm doing in Sacramento. Would you consider running? And my very, very first response was absolutely not. Why would I want to do this to myself again? And, I went back and I talked to family and friends and previous supporters and sort of the things that I had been very, very passionate about during the city council race, the issues of housing, the issues of equity, the issues of poverty, and how I might be able to affect those in a bigger level at the state level. And after about 4 months after his asking, I committed.
So, you mentioned the big items everyone's talking about, right? Especially those of us on the West Coast, one of them housing. What can you do from the assembly? I'm sure that's probably part of what drove you to run for city council, but what can you do from the assembly to impact that?
So, part of the issues that I saw at the city level, right, and they've been very public around corruption, particularly like developer interests and corruption and how you get things passed, right? It seems very, not just difficult, right? It seems like the process is screwed up, right? That there's no, here's a checklist and here's how you're going to get your project approved, right? It takes years. So at the state level, it's both two things, right? First off, it's how do we upzone? Because I think what is plaguing California, what we haven't been able to do for decades now is build more housing. Right? We have not kept up with our population growth, and that takes multifamily units, that takes townhomes, that takes different methods of housing, and we're just not doing it at the city level. So I think the state has done, as best job as they can to pass legislation like SB 9, SB 10 to really allow for the upzoning of our cities. And it's not just a Los Angeles problem; it's across the state. So I've in the time after the city council race, I joined the board of Abundant Housing Los Angeles. I joined a statewide coalition of nonprofits. We meet monthly around what other legislation. We really pushed forward a Senator Caballero bill last year around increasing access to home ownership in smaller lots. So stuff like that I think the state can really hone in on.
And I mean, that's always tricky too, because you have another version of NIMBYism, which is no density over here. And the challenges of, people that have neighborhoods with single family homes that don't want giant apartment buildings built right next to them. But we, like, as you point out, we are literally tens of thousands of units behind what we need to be building, right? Mm-hmm. It almost seems like I hear everyone saying, well, I'm going to do this about housing and I'm going to do this about, public safety. And I'm going to do this about education. And it's almost like they're on the campaign trail waving a magic wand. And you're like, after a while, my eyes glaze over and I'm like, okay, what you said is what we all want, but how do you get there?
One thing at a time, right? So, after the city council race, I'm like, what one thing can I affect, right? And living in my community, I live in a single family home neighborhood. But I saw the alleyways, right? They're a nuisance. They have been since the city locked them up in the 90s. How do we use this land, right? That right now is oftentimes blighted, oftentimes overgrown, or, there's legal dumping in them. So I brought in a couple of different organizations to study, how we might be able to implement lot splits by activating alleyways, right? So that's a research project that I'm working on with a couple of organizations. And that could solve for, a lot of people. There's a lot of displacement happening that people that own their homes even can't afford taxes or repairs on them. So how do we help them utilize their property without being displaced to either build an ADU or sell the back part of their property that does not affect, the street views, the very traditional craftsman style street views from the, street level, but actually helps and creates a type of density that sort of counters that NIMBY narrative.
And so you're talking about adding units, some kind of units like the little what they call ADUs now, in-law residencies or tiny houses,
right,
along those alleyways.
Yeah. Yes.
And what has been the response to that?
We hired a grad student researcher because there are so many municipal and state policies, right, that need to change. We need to think about mail delivery. We need to think about sanitation. We need to think about, if you actually do split the lot and sell the lot, to make sure that the front property of the original owner is not reassessed for tax purposes, right? Because we have Prop 13 implemented and their tax base is at a certain level. So there are all these things to think about before we even try to propose legislation. I'm thinking that there are, in the way that the city has already pre-approved some type of ADU styles, how do we do something that's even bigger, right? Something that might be 2 stories or 3 stories. People complain about parking all the time, that might already have a garage built in the bottom level, more of like a townhome style.
Mm-hmm. So it's really studying right now.
It's really studying right now.
We're talking with Dulce Vasquez. She wants your vote for the 57th Assembly District. We do have a lot to talk about. When we come forward, let's look a little bit deeper at your story and how it informs your politics, what you are doing right now, and how it gets you to where you need to be ready on day one to be an assembly member in a statewide office. We're talking about election. Yeah, it's here. It's right now. Get ready. KBLA is here for you. KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do Black history every single day. In fact, as the only Black talk radio station west of the Mississippi, we are Black history. Our annual Black History Month luncheon is fast approaching, and we want to be sure to give you ample time to get your company, organization, church, or group to join us at this year's celebration on the last day of the month, Thursday, February 29th at noon. Last year, we honored iconic local Black media personalities, including Pat Harvey, Jim Hill, Mark Brown, Beverly White, Sandy Banks, and Pat Prescott, and raised $20,000 in scholarships. This year, we're honoring Black Hollywood creatives who have used their artistic genius as climate justice champions. At this year's luncheon, we will be showcasing and sharing their inspiring work on our big screen. Plus, a scrumptious meal, live music, great company, and lots of fun with your favorite KBLA Talk 1580 hosts. So contact us today at info@smileyaudio.media.com or call 323 323-290-4690. That's info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. We hope to see you Thursday, February 29th as we close out Black History Month. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Taco Bell just dropped the new Cravings Value Menu. Now you can get 10 items for $3 or less, which means you can get the food you want for the price you want. It's almost like you can have your cake and eat it too. But in this case, it's a double-stacked taco from the new Cravings Value Menu. So basically, you can have your double-stacked taco and eat it too, which is a lot crunchier than cake. The new Cravings Value Menu is here. Get it at Taco Bell today. At participating U.S. Taco Bell locations while supplies last. Contact store for price and participation which vary. Tax extra.
Substance use disorder and addiction is so isolating. And so, as a Black woman in recovery, hope must be loud. It grows louder when you ask for help and you're vulnerable. It is the thread that lets you know that no matter what happens, you will be okay.
When we learn the power of hope, recovery is possible. Find out how at startwithhope.com. Brought to you by the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, Shatterproof, and the Ad Council.
Your floors can go from clean to dirty fast. From juice spills, whoops, to muddy paw prints, to little sticky finger marks. Good thing your Swiffer WetJet works fast too. Swiffer WetJet easily cleans everyday messes as quick as they happen. The next mess is right around the corner. So grab your Swiffer WetJet and just spray, push, all clean.
Your ancestors' favorite radio station, and your favorite morning show host. Let's get back to Dominique DiPrima right now.
Right now, we are getting to know the candidates that want your vote. Whenever your ballot comes in. I think the mail-in ballots are due next week. The actual final day to vote will be March 5th, which is Election Day. And Dulce Vasquez is with me in the studio. You can go to KBLA 1580's YouTube and see us. You say your story is not unlike a lot of other immigrants here in Los Angeles. Meeting you right now, it feels like it might be because you're running for state assembly. But you said you grew up cleaning houses with your mom.
Yes.
So, tell me how that informs your perspective on everything.
Literally everything. When I came to the U.S. when I was 7. For about a year, my mom was a nanny. And then when my brother came about a year later, she switched to full-time cleaning houses to have flexibility in her schedule. And she would take me along with her, right? She would, on days off or on weekends, if she had a home to do, I would go in there and she'd give me the air quotes easy tasks of vacuuming or, cleaning the windows. And I would see these ginormous houses that I had only seen on telenovelas, right? In Mexico, these things just don't exist. Well, at least in my world, they did not exist. And just wondering what kinds of jobs people had or how you get there. And then growing up and seeing how unattainable it is, right? You can work all the time. You can work multiple jobs. And throughout high school, I did work multiple jobs just to help my parents make ends meet, get through college, get to do the experiences that were presented in front of me. And now, I'm in Los Angeles where you have that massive wealth inequality, right? You have these $38 million homes in Bel Air and Beverly Hills, and you have people working 3 jobs, struggling to make rent, and a rent that increases every year on a property that's continually dilapidated, right? Why do they continue to charge more for things that are losing their value, right? It should be like a car. So that impacts me. My dad first was a dairy farm worker, and then the dairy farm was sold and he became a construction worker. You work out of necessity. That's what's available. And in construction too, seeing, not only my undocumented immigrant experience, but also watching the experiences of people that he worked with, seeing raids and seeing families get separated. My own family, my uncle was detained for months at a detention center and then finally deported. All of those things shape, and all of those things I see in this community when I talk to people. I see the struggle. I see how hard it is, how groceries continue to get expensive, more expensive and unaffordable. And all of that, are things that I've experienced and things that we can legislate ourselves out of.
What do you mean by we can legislate ourselves out?
Well, I think poverty is a policy. We've created, we talked about housing earlier. We have decided not to build housing for years and years and years, and now we are at this point, right? We have immigrants, right? That we've decided to build a financial system that inherently excludes people, and not just immigrants, right? Credit checks, right? We need that for an apartment. That means that if a property owner doesn't do a credit check because immigrants don't have credit, right? You are subject. That is a bad relationship that you're establishing. All of these things were created by policy. So how do we change it? How do we start to change all of the inequitable policies that have existed for 100 years, right? Redlining was a policy. How do we change that? How do we start to correct the errors of our predecessors?
I'm sure that I'm sure because I know the conversation we have on this radio station, and I'm aware of the conversations that go on about this radio station and about these topics in places like X, Twitter, and the like. And I know what the national sort of, the national pitch of the conversation around immigration is right now. But let's look at it not from the necessarily government perspective, but from Black Americans' perspective. There is a perception among some, or I'll say, it could be even widespread, that immigrants feel they should come here and step over African American families that have been here for generations, that have built this country, that were enslaved here and continue to be discriminated against. And, some may perceive that, okay, this seat is Reggie Jones-Sawyer. He's an African American. Now here you are, you're, Mexican American immigrant. Why should you jump the line, I guess? Or how do you see that?
Who created the line? I wouldn't be here if Reggie hadn't asked me to run. If Reggie trusts that I can carry on his legacy, if Reggie trusts that I have the moral compass to make right and equitable choices for the Black community, for the Latino community, for the growing AAPI community in this district, for everyone, then that gives me the confidence to know that I can make the right choices for all of the residents of the Assembly District.
I mean, who created the line is a fair question, but it's also a fair, I think it's a little dismissive of the fact that, African Americans, line or no line, we always seem to get to be the bottom of the caste strata in this country. And so I do think it's especially given the anti-Blackness. You've been in City Hall. You actually wanted to work there full time as a council member, and anti-Blackness has plagued our politics in Los Angeles. So I think maybe that's part two to the question, is like, how would you address that as an immigrant, as a Latina, where people are going to say, how do I know you will prioritize our issues? How do I know that you won't, foster more of the anti-Blackness that we heard Nuri Martinez and, and others, and Kevin De Leon partaking in? I mean, it's a problem at City Hall.
No,
as quiet as kept. It's a problem at City Hall.
And I will clarify, I've never worked in City Hall.
Right.
I'm, not necessarily an outsider.
No,
right.
right.
But I've never worked at City Hall. I've never staffed an elected official. Why do you laugh?
Yeah, it's just a big job.
It looks like a massive job. But no, I think it's a serious issue. I think there's the racism part of the conversations. I was disgusted by what I heard, but I was not surprised by what I heard. Right? I think sometimes, people's ego and desire for more and more and more is ugly, right? It gets the best of them. And I'm not going to sit here and say that there isn't anti-Black sentiment in the Latino community. I think you just made the point, too, that there's sometimes anti-Latino resentment amongst the Black community. And we have to be open and talk about it. And I think that there's the work that people in your generation have laid down for us has really broken open the opportunity for our generation and younger to really examine and delve into it and talk about it and make sure that we're having those conversations in our dining room table. I've had those conversations within my own family of colorism and anti-Blackness and colonialism, and a lot of it just comes from, this learned white supremacy and white is best.
Yeah. We're going to pick this up after news, traffic, and sports. It's an important conversation. We're talking with Dulce Vasquez on KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. President Biden will be joining the families of 3 American soldiers who were killed overseas when their remains are returned to the U.S. today. 3 Army Reserve soldiers were killed in Jordan last weekend when they were attacked by an Iranian-made drone. The soldiers were Sergeant William Rivers of Carrollton, Georgia, Specialist Kennedy Sanders of Waycross, Georgia, and Specialist Brianna Moffitt of Savannah, Georgia. All are African-American. Another big streamer is cracking down on password sharing. Disney-owned Hulu is revising its terms of service to ban sharing accounts with people outside the household. The change is immediate for new customers. Password sharing has been an issue for streamers looking to expand their user base and increase profits. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Joe Buck and John Smoltz welcoming you back to the City Center Convenience Mart. Uh-oh. She's looking at the cigarettes, but she just grabs the gum off the counter. Stand Up to Cancer and Rally want you to reduce your risk for cancer. Go to takeahealthystand.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The final 2 head coaching vacancies in the NFL were filled today. Baltimore defensive coordinator Mike McDonald was hired by Seattle. Dallas defensive coordinator Dan Quinn was hired by Washington. Of the 8 openings in the offseason, 3 teams hired a black head coach. Gerard Mayo at New England, Raheem Morris at Atlanta, and Antonio Pierce at Las Vegas. 6 of the NFL's 32 teams will have a black head coach in the 2024 season. We kick off Black History Month today with our first Black History Month sports moment. On January 31st, 1988, Doug Williams became the first black quarterback to play in a Super Bowl. He was named MVP after throwing 4 touchdown passes to lead Washington to a 42-10 win over Denver. Williams' performance erased the myth that black quarterbacks were not capable of leading NFL teams to a championship. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Got me a damn girl on my team.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe we have the best tag team in morning radio. Dominique DiPrima and Tavis Smiley as the first black woman in Los Angeles to anchor a morning drive talk radio show. Dominique covers local politics like a blanket. Weekday mornings from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. At 9 a.m., Dominique passes the baton to Tavis Smiley, who talks to everybody about everything every day until 12 noon. KBLA's dynamic duo Dominique and Tavis. It's no wonder the LA Civil Rights Department is honoring Dominique DiPrima this year at its Tell Our Story honoring Black journalist leaders and storytellers event, Thursday, February 8th. Or that the John M. Langston Bar Association of Los Angeles is honoring Tavis Smiley at its 47th Annual Installation and Scholarship Awards Gala with its Community Impact Award on February 10th. We couldn't be more proud of Dominique and Tavis, who make Black history every day, not just in February. If you're missing Dominique and Tavis weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got your black.
Holla, yeah.
Jackson Hewitt has a plan to get your tax refund fast with a buck here, buck there. Here a buck, there a buck, everywhere a buck.
You don't have to wait weeks for your tax refund. Get money sooner with a no-fee refund advance loan at Jackson Hewitt.
On this loan, there's a money today guarantee. E-I-E-I-Do.
Don't settle for chicken feed. Get fast bucks at Jackson Hewitt today. No-fee refund advance loans by Republic Bank offered to eligible clients. Money today guarantee if approved for a loan on a prepaid card. Details at jacksonhewitt.com.
Spilled your drink? Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up spills quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less than the leading ordinary brand. So you can get back to your night. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
We're for Washington. We love Febrez's new scent. Refresh and energize.
So much we made a song about it.
Settle for bumps, ingrowns, and itch due to dry skin. Venus for Pubic Hair and Skin is here with the only razor and regimen specifically designed for your pubic area, featuring a razor with a patented irritation defense bar and skincare regimen that is dermatologist and gynecologist tested. Venus helps protect your pubic skin from shave irritation. Visit GilletteVenus.com to learn more about our full regimen of products.
Thanks for waking up with Dominique DiPrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
All right, we're talking with Dulce Vasquez. And it's so funny, you read the bios, you got to read between the lines. What are you really saying? But one thing that you can solidly say is that you are an educator.
Yes.
That you've spent your life in education. You mentioned you've been endorsed by former Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa, who found a way to make education a citywide issue, but it's really a state issue.
It is a state issue.
So what is it that you would hope to accomplish in that space should you be elected to the 57th district?
So I currently work in higher education. I do work for Arizona State University. Over the course of my working there managing the California market, we've acquired 2 buildings in downtown Los Angeles, which I work in, the Herald Examiner historic journalism enterprise in downtown LA, and then recently FITM, the Fashion Institute. And in that time of helping ASU come into the California market, I've seen many different things. One, a tremendous need for more higher education institutions, and that is because we need more spots. We've got roughly 5 million Californians that started college and never finished. So we also have the UCs, they have record high acceptance numbers, right? But also record high rejections. So how do you balance for that? How do you do that when you're also landlocked, right? It's hard. The last time a UC campus was built, Merced, it took 20 plus years to build, right? And then you have people like Mayor London Breed requesting that the UC system build another campus in downtown San Francisco. So there's tremendous need. So taking that into Sacramento and saying we need more. With that, we also need more funding. We need to be able to fund Cal Grants at a higher level. And I think the way that we have structured the Cal Grant system oftentimes give less money to the students sometimes most in need. So our tiered system of what amount of money CSU students or community college students need, that system was built with an assumption that most of those students are commuter students, right, in air quotes, that they live at home, right, that they have their rent paid for, that they have food available. Well, that's just not the case in 2024. We have the largest population of unhoused students attending our CSU and community college systems. So we also need to strategize about how we build more student housing for that type of population of students. Now you start dipping into the K through 12 system or even the TK system that we want to fund to make sure that students have that students and parents, right, for going into the system earlier, because we know that those early literacy rates, right, are affected by when you start getting into schooling. We have a volatile way of funding our education system, right? It's all tied to revenues for the state, which is tied to the market and private incomes. How do we stabilize that and how do we grow that? So these are all things that I'm bringing into Sacramento, having worked in education for this long.
Speaking of Sacramento and the will to do things, and specifically Reggie Jones-Sawyer's seat, he was on the reparations task force. They've now wrapped. They've given their recommendations. There's a package that's been put forth, at least the first steps of that by the Black Caucus, Congressional Black Caucus here in the state of California, Legislative Black Caucus, I mean to say. Where are you on reparations?
I'm 2 years to put that report together. I think the recommendations a lot of them were attainable. I think the Legislative Black Caucus bringing forth the package of legislation this year, including obviously an apology from the state, that should be a given. I think some of the more specific ones, like tuition, right? Full wages for people that are incarcerated, not having them do either forced labor or pay them under market rate. I think all of those are good. I'm not quite there yet on cash reparations, and I don't think the Legislative Black Caucus there is there on cash reparations yet, because again of that, where are we going to get the money from, and that budget volatility that we're experiencing.
So when you say you're not quite there yet on cash payments, if we were flush with money, you wouldn't have a problem with it's a philosophical is it a philosophical issue or is it a budget issue? Because I mean, when you think of 12 generations of Black folks working without pay to build this country, the money is here. It's in the buildings, it's in the land, it's in the fact that we're a superpower. That's based on, my ancestors' free labor.
I am both, right? The budget thing is easy to sort of fall back on and be like, we don't have the money for it, right? I think philosophically, you're absolutely right that the way that we've got to 2024 was built on the backs of slave labor. How that then is implemented, right? Is it going to be $2,000? Well, that's barely a month's rent, right? How do we what is that number? And how do we actually do something that can help impact someone past, a month's rent or 2 months' rent, or whatever it is?
You said before we went to news, traffic, and sports, you were talking about, some tough conversations even within your own family. And I know part of what happened in the room at City Hall was also anti-Indigenous sentiment and the kind of shadism, classism, but really shadism and anti-First Nations vibe or strain that runs through the Latin American communities. I say communities because it's not one country. Right. There's no Hispania. It's all these different countries. So talk a little bit about that. I mean, and how you see that.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional because I think of that. There were so many ugly things that were said in that conversation. but the anti-Indigenous, literally like very dismissive, they're ugly, was so hurtful to. There were so many parts that were hurtful, right? But to me, I think that part is the part that just really lost it for me, because coming from Mexico and understanding the culture and the contributions and, oftentimes the way that we, again, dismiss low-wage labor and dismiss difference, right? We have this, people have this sort of like, thank you. I think it's disgusting, and I value the people. Like Cielo is an organization here in Los Angeles that has done incredible work for the Indigenous community. And yeah, I'm so hurt by it.
Yeah, I mean, it's personal. It sounds like you identify with the Indigenous community in that conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not someone who grew up in an Indigenous community, but my melanin speaks for itself, that I am of mixed Mexican heritage, and I embrace, I wear, traditional I try to incorporate traditional Mexican clothing and styles into modern. I'm very into fashion, into modern designs, and I think that it was just a disgusting display.
Yeah, I think when you talk about that shadeism or anti-Indigenousness in Latin America, I'm African American. People mix me up with other people or whatever. I'm African American, but I'm pretty bilingual. And sometimes, and one of the ways I learned was watching, novellas and stuff. And you would think everybody in Mexico was blonde and blue-eyed. You watch Mexican TV, it's like, hey, where are the Mexicans? Oh, I mean, not to say a Mexican person has to look a certain way, but it's very similar to what, the shadeism here.
I grew up watching that, right? I grew up, that is what is presented to you, that the model of wealth and success is white. And you continue to see that in Mexican television today.
Yeah. So we got a lot to talk about. We're going to squeeze it all in. You said, your generation, okay. That was an error. You said our generation has set things up for your generation. What generation are you?
I am a millennial.
Millennial. Okay.
Yes.
And what does that mean in terms of going? I don't know how many millennials there are in the assembly, but is that important?
It's a growing population.
I know. Assemblymember Brian is a millennial. I don't know about the rest of them, but
Alex Lee, so I think identifies as.
Is that important, and if so, why?
Absolutely. I think age difference within legislative bodies is hugely impactful, right? Because you have, so many millennials and Gen Z struggling with, again, going back to policy, right? Where we feel that our older generations are like, well, why can't you buy a house? Why can't you, get married? What do you mean you can't afford kids? Those are the things, I'm turning 38 next week.
Happy B-Day.
Thank you. Aquarius, with a, what is it? Pisces moon. So I'm a crier. But having people that are living through the issues that we're trying to legislate ourselves out of, right? The average home price in South Los Angeles right now for an absolute teardown is $500,000. What kind of income do you need to have to afford a house that's $500,000? The average household income currently in the district is less than $40,000 a year. That is completely unattainable, unaffordable. The same thing with rents, the same thing with child. Usually the biggest expense for a household is their housing. It is exceedingly growing to be childcare in this nation. So how the people that are living through it currently, I think, are best to start legislating for it.
All right, we're talking with Dulce Vasquez. She's running for Assembly District 57 in this upcoming primary election, which will most certainly go to a runoff, but we'll see. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
short break.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
When you're rolling Charmin, ultra soft on the party. Less is more, so roll it back, everybody. Charmin's irresistibly soft and hella nice. My grip is always soft. It's our party vibe. She's crushing everything, so our cheeks feel fine. So what? Everybody wanna touch the sky.
Charmin Ultra Soft is irresistibly soft and more absorbent, so you can use less. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
She's so smooth. So I'm interrupting my own shower to remind you to treat your skin like the queen she is with Olay Hyaluronic Body Wash, packed with Olay's highest level of vitamin B3 complex. It's so moisturizing that it will give you visibly smoother, head-turning skin in just 14 days. People wondering, how'd she get so smooth? Olay Hyaluronic Body Wash. Also, try Olay Hyaluronic Body Lotion.
Jim was at the laundromat when he heard his ear said, "Maraca, senor," but his nose said, "Hey, freshest scent ever." Following his nose, Jim found a man pouring Gain scent beads into the washer. The scent, the freshness. Jim blurted, "Sir, your scent Maraca smell amazing." You could call them scent maracas, but most noses call them Gain scent beads. Try Gain scent beads. Way fresher than detergent alone.
Meet Cheryl. Hey. She's on vacation and lost in the moment. Unfortunately, so is her Chase debit card.
It's gotta be somewhere.
Maybe she lost it at salsa night.
These skirts should have pockets.
Or maybe she lost it at Pilates.
3 and 2 and...
But she's not worried. With the Chase mobile app, she can lock her card till it turns up. Tools that help protect. One bank that puts you in control. Visit chase.com/checking. Chase, make more of what's yours.
Chase mobile app is available for select mobile devices. Message and data rates may apply. JP Morgan Chase Bank, N.A. member FDIC.
You're all set with your Medicare prescriptions, Mrs. Brown.
This is not just low-cost copays at Walgreens.
I can actually help you set up 90-day refills if you want.
This is having a partner you can trust. Get low-cost copays, 90-day refills, and delivery from your neighborhood Walgreens. This is being independent. Together. Walgreens.
Restrictions apply. For details, see walgreens.com/pharmacy.
Not rolling for Duncan Shannon and their client CTPP. This radio spot is entitled Stephen, KICA 2023 5000. And this is a 30-second radio, hot stereo, monocompatible.
That was another way I would smoke once an hour. That didn't work either. All that would happen at some point of the day, I would end up doubling up. Other ways that I tried to quit was I stopped buying cigarettes totally. But if I took 3 puffs off of 15 friends, those didn't count because they weren't my cigarettes and they weren't full cigarettes. You know, I went through a lot.
Every attempt is part of your story to quit for good. Visit Kick It California today at kickitca.org.
We're not for everybody, but we're for everybody. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
And we're talking with Dulce Vasquez. She's running for Assembly Seat 57. There's 4 folks in that race. We've talked to 2 of the other ones, so we'll see if the other one responds. All have been invited. Why should we vote for you? I mean, why give us your pitch, Dulce Vasquez for Assembly District 57?
Yeah, so Dulce Vasquez, I'm running for Assembly District 57. I believe you should vote for me. I am someone who is progressive, but also very practical. I'm very data-driven. I look at the issues. I'm someone who is deeply passionate about my community, about South Los Angeles. I serve on my neighborhood council, and I've seen what people need. I've talked to people door to door, and I know what people are struggling with. I feel that experience. I've lived that experience, and I feel that I am best equipped to represent them and to fight for them in Sacramento.
That was a boom elevator pitch, almost exactly 30 seconds. Want to remind our KBLA delegation, Friedman Friday is in the second hour of the show, and we'll be talking with Encobra's Cam Howard. So, Dulce Vasquez, we talked a little bit about education and what you want to do. You talked about houselessness. We We spoke on reparations. What do you think is, I think the next on your list of priorities?
Probably, so this is a kind of an interrelated issue, right? I think I see housing as sort of the nucleus of lots of maladies that we face, of obviously houselessness, but then also transportation, climate change, healthcare, right? Housing is at the core of that. So I'm very interested in the Transportation Committee in Sacramento. South Los Angeles, we have a couple of different light rail lines, but we also have some of the largest bus corridors in the state. Vermont, Alameda is one of the highest corridors for obviously like 18-wheelers. We have a large population that does not move around by car. They move around by bicycle and by bus. And we need to make sure that we have the funding to keep pedestrians safe, to keep bicyclists safe, to, as our world continues to get warmer, that we have proper bus shading for people waiting for the bus, that we have, what are they called? The ads, billboards, right, that show you when the next bus is coming, that you see in like Chicago and sometimes New York, to make sure that people know how long they're waiting for, people who might not have smartphones, who might not have data, that affects this community very deeply.
Okay. Do you think programs like, I'm going to circle back to education a little bit because it's such a big job of the state,
Absolutely.
right? In fact, the state even takes over districts sometimes when they think they're troubled. Do you think that plans like what we have here in LAUSD, the Black Student Achievement Plan, is something that we could and or should replicate?
Yes. I think, working for, Arizona State University after 2020, we put out 10-step plan, right? And included, LAUSD obviously is for K through 12, but I think you have to also expand into how that affects other institutions. And then also, carry that even further. We don't have enough Black teachers, right? Because we don't have enough people going into master's programs for teaching credentials. How do we, those are all issues that are interconnected. How do we help that, right? We want students to see people that look like them in the classroom. How do we help students that have chronic absenteeism, right? Instead of punishing them, understanding why it is that they're not being able to get to school. All of those things, I think those are types of programs that we should be replicating up and down the state.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a frequent complaint of mine, is that when you have school districts where a huge percentage of the population are in foster care and a chunk of others are unhoused, that maybe our business model is no longer meeting the customer base that we currently have for students.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, we have a few minutes here, and I want to make sure you say everything you came here to say. I do want to ask you, though, you said in your bio, you describe yourself as an openly bi-Latina immigrant, but you're also married. So break that down. I mean, some people might think, okay, what that's confusing maybe.
Yeah, what bisexuality means, right? It means I'm attracted to both sexes. I am currently in a monogamous heterosexual relationship with a man, but if anything were to happen to that, he leaves me, or God forbid something happens to him, my next relationship might be with a woman. I'm attracted to women.
So you're basing that on your identity and your life experience. Because I don't know, I'm sure your husband is like, yeah, not anymore, not right now. She's not.
Well, we have interesting conversations because I came out while I was married.
Oh wow, interesting. That is wild.
So me wanting to be honest about how I identify, right? I've been a part of the LGBT community as an ally since I can remember, right? My two best friends in high school were lesbians, and I supported them in every march and every letter writing to the Massachusetts Supreme Court. And now wanting to live my authentic life, I had to come out to my husband as bisexual.
Well, that's another show for another day. Couple of minutes here. What have we missed?
Oh, what have we missed? I love the city. I want to see the city thrive. And I want to make sure that we have thoughtful and practical solutions. Oftentimes we tend to demonize certain sectors, right? I'm coming in here saying that housing is my priority. Sometimes we demonize housing developers. At the end of the day, they also have to build affordable housing. We sometimes demonize the business community. At the end of the day, they are also job creators, right? And any entrepreneur with a small business, those policies that we create in Sacramento affect how they can succeed, how they can thrive. So I'm in here providing a very rational voice, someone that understands, has very progressive values, but understands the implications and how things are, different policies are then implemented and how they affect our day-to-day lives.
Tell us your website, how to track you.
DulceVasquez.com, DulceVasquez.com. I am on mostly Instagram. I think X is a little too negative for me. So Vasquez Dulce on Instagram.
Well, thank you for coming in. It's nice talking with you. Nice to meet you in person. And good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
You can find out more at DulceVasquez.com or Vasquez Dulce on Instagram. It's time for Freedman Fridays, my friends. It is a comprehensive reparations conversation exclusively on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. President Biden will be joining the families of 3 American soldiers who were killed overseas when their remains are returned to the U.S. today. 3 Army Reserve soldiers were killed in Jordan last weekend when they were attacked by an Iranian-made drone. The soldiers were Sergeant William Rivers of Carrollton, Georgia, Specialist Kennedy Sanders of Waycross, Georgia, and Specialist Brianna Moffitt of Savannah, Georgia. All are African-American. Another big streamer is cracking down on password sharing. Disney-owned Hulu is revising user base and increased profits.